Hello and welcome again to another fishing tutorial from Basic Fishing. Since the warmer month is closing in very soon, I thought of making a Sabiki tutorial video. Because when the warmer month arrives, it means one thing: lots of bait fish swarming in their thousands. Today I thought of going over the basics on how to use Sabiki rigs, so that people may have the chance to catch some of the fish that is abundant during the summer months. Hope you enjoy watching this video, and I hope you learn a thing or two on sabiki fishing. Before starting this tutorial, I want to go over on what a sabiki rig looks like. This is what a sabiki rig is. A set of hooks resembles of small flashes used to catch fish that feed on small prey. A typical sabiki rig consists of 6 small hooks with swivels at both ends like a ledger rig. Each hooks are decorated to look like the bait fish's food source. Here, this hook looks like a small larval creature that is easy picking for the bait fish. This one has a resemblance of a small krill that is also a major food source for the fish. They are both bright and attractive too, which helps to get the fish to bite. Each hooks are also very sharp as well, which is ideal for a quick hookup. The sabikis also come with small glowing lumo beads, which give the extra attention, especially when fishing at night. Sabiki rigs comes in all different shapes, colors and sizes, giving the angler options to pick depending on where they fish, the conditions and the species to his or her preferences. The sabikis are used around walls, boats or any structure over water. There are so many different types of sabiki rigs out on the market, some that are simple to the unusual. If you're unsure on what sabiki rigs to pick in the store, here are the ones that I personally enjoy using. Here I like these Black Magic Wasabi sabiki flies as part of my sabiki rig gears. The thing I like about them is that they come in different sizes. The smallest I would prefer to use for most of my fishing, but usually I use the smallest sabiki to help me to catch piper. I use size 8 to help me to catch the regular size bait fish that I would be happy to take home or use for bait. Another sabiki rig style I like to use is this. This sabiki resembles a small shrimp or krill, and what I like about this particular sabiki is that the body of the shrimp is rubbery and soft, so it indicates the real thing. For rods and reels, I like to use a medium-sized gear. One example is my trusty telescopic Shimano gear I regularly use, as well as my Jarvis Walk National gear as well. To set up my sabiki rig, I simply open the package and clip one end of the rig to my swivel and slowly take it out. Remember to take it out slowly to avoid tangles, because sabiki tangles are a huge pain in the neck. Once taken out, I simply clip on to a sinker at the end, and I usually use 2 to 3 ounce sinker. For piper, I use a very small sinker and attach a pencil style float at the top to allow the rig to be suspended above the surface. Using the sabiki rig is super simple, and there are 2 ways of using it. One way is with bait, and this is pretty dead easy. With bait and with the flasher on the hook, that makes it super attractive. It doesn't take long for the fish to take the bait. In this footage, I decided to use some light to ensure that my lumo bead glows underwater, since the light was slowly fading away. And surely enough, I was able to get a good hookup on some good-sized yellow-eyed mullet. But the problem of using this method is that you don't know what species is down underwater, and you could end up getting unwanted species, as well as catching undersized fish. Since the hooks are small, it's too easy for a fish like the snapper to swallow the whole hook. And as a result, it gets difficult to get the hook out of the fish without harming it. Some pickers are also tricky to hook up to, and sometimes your baits get stolen very easily, meaning that you need to bait up every time you feel a bite and miss it. The other way of using the Sabiki rig is going baitless. This is what the Sabiki rigs are originally designed for, catching fish without the need of baits. To give you an idea on how to work a Sabiki rig, here is a simple illustration on the Sabiki rig action. In this drawing, where, depending on where the schools might congregate, and I usually predict close to the bottom, I drop my rig down, and as soon as it hits rock bottom, I wind it up a bit so that I can work my rig up and down. I usually work it up and down slowly and not too aggressively, because this would scare the fish away. By moving them in a steady speed, I am able to imitate the baitfish's prey, and that usually gets their attention. Depending on how much fish is around the area, you could get more than one fish. However, the problem with fishing this way is that it can be very tiring, and depending on the tide or the time of day, the fish can easily disappear without a trace. But this can easily be solved if you deploy a burley trail into the water to bring them back into the area. Now here are the species you will catch using Sabiki rigs without the need of baits. Yellow-eyed mullets are present almost everywhere. Jack mackerel usually swarm around wharves in large numbers, and spotties will attack Sabikis too. Pilchards and anchovies can be caught as well, since they are so abundant, and this was my first slimy mackerel that was caught at the beginning of my fishing session. In addition, kahawais will also be caught using sabikis. Pipers can be caught using sabikis, but they need to be used in a particular way, since these small fish are very tricky to catch on some days. Remember to be careful with sabiki flies, because these hooks are pretty sharp and they do hurt like crazy. Also, they can tangle very easily as well. To avoid this, grab your sinker at the end and hold it out, so that the rig won't fly all over the place. Sabikis also don't last very long. Around 2 or 3 trips is what it takes for these rigs to lose their quality, and eventually it needs to be replaced. To make them last longer, give them a rinse with fresh water to avoid being rusted by the salt water. Another tip I like to point out is that you can easily unhook the fish without even touching the fish itself, meaning that you don't have to get your hands dirty. Here what I do is I simply grab hold of the hook and shake the fish off, and since the fish has a soft mouth, it falls off super easily, and this method is ideal to use when you catch the unwanted species. Now here is a simple demonstration on how to fish with sabiki flies. Here on the wharf, I was struggling to hook onto any big fish that was around, and in fact, I managed to lose 2 good-sized fish that really made my reel scream like crazy. To make up for the loss, I decided to go and see what baitfish were around. The amount of baitfish around was ridiculous, and I was able to see a thick school of fish swimming around the surface. What I did was simply gently drop my sabiki rig around the surface and worked it up and down. And just like that, I got myself a small pilchard. The amount of pilchard that was around that day was crazy, and in fact, every drop on my sabiki rig, I got myself a good number of pilchards getting hooked. After a while, I completely forgot that I was actually here to catch some kahawai, but the sabiki fishing proved to be a lot more fun and productive than having to wait for a big fish to take the bait. And not to mention, the weeds was making the fishing a complete nightmare. The tide was also going out as well, meaning that most of the fish have left the area. So I continued on with my sabiki fishing. Every drop, I kept on getting bites, from 1 fish to 3 fish. I almost had 4 fish, but 2 dropped off really easily. And most of my fish that I caught were released unharmed, since I had no reason to keep any of them. After a while, the bite on the surface went down, mostly because of the shags that were after an easy meal. So I casted out my rig and worked it up and down while it was drifting into the current. And this gave me a better result. I was able to get more fish to get hooked by dropping the rig from the bottom and working it up to the surface. It was not only pilchards that I was hooking up to, I also managed to hook on to some jack mackerels as well. And this shows that there are a lot of different baitfish around places that you would not expect them to be. Every time I release these baitfish, the shacks always try to get a go at them. But strangely enough, even these big birds weren't quick enough to catch a small fish. These birds were bold, but they were also cautious, and probably because they know what it's like to be tangled around a sabiki rig, or any fishing line in general. The bite went on non-stop for the next 2 hours, and this was the most fun I've ever had with sabiki fishing. And the best part was, I didn't even have to use any bait at all. If I did use bait, I would have got snapper instead, because the baitfish were mostly congregating around mid-water, and they would not have seen the sabiki rigs at all. This way of fishing was so addictive that I kept on going till all the schools of fish slowly stopped biting, and my arms were at the point of dropping dead. Days like this really made it worth using just sabiki rigs, and I had a lot of fun. All the fish I caught were released, and after getting this last fish, that ended my session. I really hope you enjoy watching this tutorial video about sabiki fishing. And if you're interested in seeing my other tutorial videos, please check them out. Click here or click in the link in the description below. Again, thank you for watching and see you next time.